What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the CrazyFaceUno Podcast, where everyone has a story and everyone's story matters. What's your story? If you'd like to support the show and help us tell more stories like the one you're about to hear, please visit CrazyFaceUno.com today. There, you can purchase items from our online store or donate. As always, I'm your host, Shane McNeely, and boy, are you in for a treat today. It is my honor and privilege to introduce our guest today. Please welcome Allie Hall. Welcome, Allie.
Hi, Shane. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm so excited. I'm excited to catch up. I know I was looking at Shocker here. I know everybody that's continually listened to the podcast is like, I wonder where he met this gal. And yes, it's true. We met at Invisible Children, and we're catching up now several years later. And I was looking at my little cheat sheet is Facebook. I always go and look at the about section on Facebook and see if I can pull any good little bits off. But it feels like you were at Invisible Children way longer than like just 2012, 2013.
I was only there for 2012 and 2013,
Yeah.
but
I feel like you were there like earlier than that. Like when I was in my head, I thought you had been there for a while. Like that's a good amount of time. Don't get me wrong, but I left, at the end of that year. So end of 2012. And it's funny. I guess a year is an eternity at Invisible Children sometimes.
I know, especially 2012.
Yeah, especially that year.
My first tour was Coney 2012, so that felt like an eternity.
Yeah, for sure. And what area did you tour?
I was New England for spring of 2012, and then Heartland, which was Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Missouri for fall of 2012.
Right. Yeah, two very different tours. And yet probably completely different experience from when I was touring instead of working in the office. Yeah, it's just crazy. I've had a lot of, Invisible Children guests on, and it's fun to kind of like think back and remember those days sometimes, But what are you up to these days? I know you're currently right now speaking to us from Washington, D.C.
I am.
And but what are you up to? Fill us in.
Yeah, so I guess I'll say I live in Alaska.
Nice.
I live in a little town in kind of south central Alaska near Anchorage. It's called Seward. I moved there in April and was there till October working on a whale watching tour boat.
Nice.
So, and then I'm moving back in January to be there for a few more months doing the same thing. So
nice.
Yeah.
So how did you find yourself in Alaska? Like, what led you there? What was that like?
Yeah. Well, it kind of started, honestly, Invisible Children helped a lot. I really wanted to go to all 50 states before I turned 30.
Nice.
Which, spoiler, I did not accomplish. I still have one left. But, so my family went to Alaska on vacation in summer of 2018 and went on the whale watching tour that I now work on. And
that's so
I was
cool.
really fortunate. Yeah, it was awesome. We saw whales. I cried. I was really lucky to get to chat with some of the deckhands that worked on my boat, and came back. I was living in Virginia at the time, working at a tech company.
Yeah.
And just wasn't feeling fulfilled, didn't know really what I was doing there. And one of the deckhands that I met reached out in January and was like, "Hey, you still thinking about coming and working with us?" Which we hadn't really talked about that, but and so I applied, I got the job, I quit my job in Virginia, and I moved to Alaska.
Wow, that's so cool. That's so cool. So what is like your normal day, like if you were like your average day working on the ship or boat or?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I have the lingo down yet, Allie. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Help me
Boat
out.
works. We're not quite a ship. We're pretty small.
Okay.
Yeah, but I get there around 8 in the morning. I am the senior deckhand on my boat, so I do all of the safety checks and check fuel levels and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're just kind of getting the boat ready cleaning, making lunches until we board passengers around 11:30.
Okay.
And we'll usually get around 100 to 150 people.
It's a good amount of people.
Yeah. You meet really cool people every day, which is really fun. I
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, I like that it's just a new group of people every single
Mm-hmm.
tour. Be out for about 6 hours. We go to a glacier and then come back, and then usually spot whales, sea lions, harbor seals along the
Nice.
way. Stop, check that out. And then we get back, we clean the boat, and then I usually go to the harbor bar for a beer. So it's a pretty standard day.
Man, that sounds awesome. Like,
It's really fun.
that sounds so cool. Yeah. I love that. I love that you left like you said it was an IT, like a tech company or whatever.
Yeah.
And you went, and now you're hanging with the whales, hanging with the sea life. That's awesome. Has the novelty worn off?
No.
No, I don't
Every
imagine
time-
it would, but it seems.
Yeah,
pretty-
every time we see a whale, it's definitely exciting. There's certain things that, making lunch every morning, I could
Do
with
without.
not but it never see everything that's out there.
Do you feel like, you weren't feeling fulfilled, or you weren't happy with where, things were at with the tech company that you were working for? And do you feel better now? Do you feel like you found something you were like looking for?
Absolutely. I feel like it's a job where I'm a lot more physically challenged, which I
Yeah.
think was something that I didn't realize I was looking for until I found it. And it's engaging with people potentially at one of the coolest moments of their lives.
Yeah.
A lot of people will come on our boats, and seeing a whale is on their bucket list. It's something
Right.
they've wanted to do. One of my favorite people that I talked to was a woman in her 80s, and she was checking things off of her bucket list, and she'd never seen a whale before. And we almost got back to harbor without seeing anything. And then at the last second, we saw this humpback, and this woman just burst into tears. She was like, this was potentially my only chance to ever do this, and I got to do it. And it's very rewarding. It's a very rewarding job.
I love that. That's awesome. That's so cool. What are there like any memories or thoughts so far? How long have you been doing this? A year now?
Yeah, about a year. I was out there
Yeah.
from April to October.
So for this first little stint that you've done, like, what are some of your favorite memories? I mean, that's obviously one that you just told us, but
Yeah. I think there was one day, this will always, I think, stand out as one of my favorite whale sightings. We saw a pod of orca and killed the engine, stopped the boat, and one of the orca kind of moseyed up to us on his side. Like, he was playing, he was curious, he was trying to figure out, like, what was going on. And as he surfaced, he made a noise. So I actually got to hear the orca noise. And that, like, I was so overwhelmed. That was one of the coolest moments.
Yeah.
But it truly never gets old. Like, anytime we see something, it's spectacular. So
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Does what's it like in Alaska? I mean, that's a area that not a lot of people have been. Surprisingly, there's been a few of my guests that have spent some time in Alaska. But yeah, what's the area of Alaska like for you? Like, I know like daylight is a whole nother thing there, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, excuse me. I live in a town called Seward. It's right on the Pacific, and it's pretty mild compared to the rest of Alaska.
Yeah.
In the summer, we'll have sunlight from 3 a.m. to midnight. So it's always light. It feels very safe. It's a comfortable place. The entire town is only about 2 miles long, so you can walk everywhere, which is so nice.
Yeah.
And I feel like the community there is wonderful.
Yeah.
The town is about 1,500 people year round, and then about 8,000 in the summer. So all the seasonal workers come in, and I'm really excited to go back and see the people that I met last summer. So
Sure.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's so cool. I'm kind of envious of like this experience. I need to like come visit and go out on your boat and see some
Yeah,
whales.
I tell everybody, come visit. I'll take you out on my boat, show you some whales, go
Heck
see a
yeah.
glacier.
What have
Yeah.
what have you learned about like whales, the sea life? Have you learned a lot?
Oh, definitely. I've learned a lot about just whale societies and how they interact with each other and how brilliant they are.
Mm.
Especially orca, just the hierarchy of the families and the way that they come together and split up, and the relationships and languages that they have
Yeah.
is incredible. They're so smart. So I think it's been really cool to get a new perspective on whales, because I don't think it's really that known just how brilliant they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a not talked about a lot, I don't think. But that's one of the big like talks with, just the reasons that some of the entertainment that we have with sea life is questionable because of how smart and brilliant and their family structure and some of those different things. So yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's been a really cool conversation that I've had with a lot of our passengers is, what's wrong with the sea life entertainment, and why there's so many issues, and why like these animals need to be protected in a better way.
Yeah.
So it's been cool to be able to have those conversations as well.
Yeah, for sure. I can imagine. Yeah. Is it mostly, I'm assuming it's tourists or visitors, or, what, is it very much the vibe of your town or your little city or your little spot, town, I guess is what you would say?
Yeah, definitely tourists primarily. We'll get a lot of photographers that come out, nature photographers, birders. We have a lot of really cool birds in the area, so people who are trying to see different species will come out. But it is definitely mostly tourists. We get a lot of cruise ships and stuff too. So,
sure.
Yeah.
I never thought about that. Neat. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So what, you were in Virginia, you said, before you moved out to Alaska. You're working for a tech company. Is that what you did right after Invisible Children?
I did move to Virginia right after Invisible Children.
Is that where you're from?
No, I'm not. Actually, I'm from Southern Illinois.
Okay. What part?
Yeah. Heron, Illinois. It's near Carbondale.
Okay.
Kind of like halfway between St. Louis and Nashville.
Okay.
In the middle of nowhere.
I lived in Charleston, Illinois.
Okay.
So like Effingham, Mattoon, that area for a bit. So I know the name that you just said, but I don't really know where that's at. I've never visited there.
Yeah. All the way at the bottom. Down in the woods.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's a beautiful place. I feel like people just think corn, but we have cliffs and rivers, and it's a beautiful place.
Yeah. There is some nice like nature. That was something growing up. My family always did, like Starved Rock, like that area. I don't know. We would always like going out and hiking and walking around in the trails with my mom and hanging out in the woods, or I don't know, whatever. But yeah, it was fun. I can see that. I always say that with Indiana though. Like people are like, I've never been to Indiana. I'm like, well, you're not really missing out on much. It's mostly cornfields. It's kind of true. There is a lot of cornfields in Indiana, Illinois, Ohio, whatever. But it has its pros, it has its cons, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, anyone listening should Google Garden of the Gods, Illinois, and just see how spectacular it is. It is breathtaking.
I believe I've been there as well, but yeah, Google that. I'm gonna write it down. I think I have been there though. We would go. Did you? Because there's a bunch of different like caves down in that area too, right? We would go down in that. Yeah, we would go down in that area and like go to the different caves and go to those like different nature areas and walk around.
Yeah, it is. It's beautiful. And there's a lot of rock climbing, which is a thing I'm pretty into. So
yeah,
that's nice. Yeah.
Is there much rock climbing in Alaska?
There is actually.
Yeah.
So it's a different type of rock climbing.
Sure.
I feel like I think it's a lot harder personally, but
yeah,
there's some really good climbing out there as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I kind of cut you off, I guess.
No, you're fine.
After Invisible Children, what was next? You moved to Virginia, you said?
Yeah, so Sammy Casson, a fellow IC alum,
Mm-hmm.
is from this area, and I didn't really know what to do with myself after Invisible Children, and she needed a roommate. She worked at a cool t-shirt printing company,
Cool.
and so she helped me get a job, and then we got an apartment, and I lived here for about 5.5, 6 years before I
Nice.
moved to Alaska. So I did that for a couple of years, worked at that t-shirt company,
Mm-hmm.
and then switched to my job at the tech company
Yeah.
and worked there for a few years. Yeah.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, Sammy. I haven't seen her, talk to her in a while either.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, it's, you kind of live vicariously through it. You mentioned it even like after Invisible Children. You're like, I don't know what to do with myself. I didn't know what to do with myself either. I was like, I knew that it was just time for me to go, and
Mhm.
you know, I felt that it was time. I was reaching that burnout point, I feel like,
Yeah.
and I just wanted to leave before, like, with a positive, like,
Yeah.
positive place, and not like feel so negatively about something, just because I was burnt out and because I wasn't taking care of myself. And but you
Yeah.
leave such a unique environment at Invisible Children, and then you like go into the world and you're like, okay, here I am. And then you're like quickly humbled and brought back
Yeah.
down to earth after that experience. And you're like, okay, cool. So this is it, huh?
Yep.
All right. Oh man.
Yeah.
But it's fun because you get to live, I don't know, like you see people even now, like people all around the country. I that's why I love interviewing and like talking to ICers, people from Invisible Children, is because everybody's out doing their own thing and they're all around the country. We're spread out everywhere around the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
And everybody's doing different things. We've all had this like common bond, this common experience. For the most part, we're a lot of us are really, like-minded in what we care about and the things that are important to us. And so it's just really interesting to see where people are at now and kind of how they've taken the lessons and the life lessons from Invisible Children and turned those into who they are today, because
Yeah.
you can't go through those doors without having like just changing and being changed, like you learn so much about yourself, about the world, when you walk through those doors at Invisible Children.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I think it's been so interesting to continue getting to know people from Invisible Children in their real lives. And
Yeah.
I've been really lucky that I've stayed in pretty close contact with a lot of people from that period. And, even seeing people 6 years later and just sitting down, and there's such a familiarity there because of that shared experience. And it's been so great to get to see what everyone has done and to reconnect. And
it's even like us having this conversation, like it doesn't feel like you and I, we weren't necessarily like, we weren't like best friend, like we weren't, we didn't like talk a lot at Invisible Children necessarily, like it wasn't like we had a bunch of conversations. But I don't know. I think that there's something about going through something hard. It's that vulnerable. We were all so vulnerable. We saw each other at our best and we saw each other at our worst. And you can go into that conversation regardless of how long it's been or how close you are, and still have that common bond and just be like, it's okay. There's safety there, right?
Yeah.
There's this like feeling of like, I feel safe talking to you because you get it. And there's so many people that don't. It's really hard to explain and to talk about the experiences that you've had and gone through and the things that you've been a part of at Invisible Children with people that haven't gone through that. It's unique, and it's really hard to explain. I feel, at least I've tried many times, and my wife, I think, is starting to kind of catch on, but she's, it's just hard. It's hard to like really understand.
Yeah. And I think one of the most frustrating things for me leaving Invisible Children was the fact that nobody understood.
Yeah. 100%.
And especially coming off of a really difficult period of that organization. I remember just trying to explain the emotion and the intensity and
Yeah.
the highs and the lows to my parents, and just feeling this weird frustration of not being able to articulate like
Yeah.
what I was feeling and make them understand, because I think coming out of it, I just wanted it to be understood so badly, because I didn't know how to process it. And I felt nostalgic, and I
Yeah.
just didn't know how to put it into words. And so
I just
I
still
think
don't know
having
if I
those events,
do.
yeah, I know.
Like, it's hard still, but like, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm right there with you.
And so I think having those people that were there for it and experienced it, even though they experienced it in their own way,
Yeah.
they at least understand the emotion that ran through that time. So having those relationships is important to me because of that familiarity. So,
Yeah.
well,
and like we've talked about it on the podcast. So if you're just tuning in and this is the first, podcast you're listening to, both of us, we worked at Invisible Children. It's a nonprofit. And we went through, I don't know if people are listening or familiar with Coney 2012. You can Google it. There's some stuff out there, but, it was a really hard time for our organization. It was something that we were thrust onto the spotlight and kind of just attacked eventually. It kind of flipped on us. We went from this beloved organization to the most misunderstood organization, and with a viral video that changed the landscape of that world for sure. And I think what was so hard is like going through such a hard thing, but also being so proud of what you were doing, and like the grit that it took to push through and persevere, and to never like really waver in what we were there to do. Like we trusted each other. I trusted people around us. We trusted our leadership, and such integrity, such like pride in being able to go through that with the people that we were able to go through it with, even though it was hard.
Yeah.
So, well, Allie, let's throw it back. Let's go all the way back to childhood, and we'll get off the Invisible Children kick, because we could talk about that probably for hours and days.
Yes, absolutely.
But yeah, if we're to go back to childhood and kind of think about that, how would you describe your childhood? What was your childhood like for you?
I mean, I had a very good childhood. I was really lucky in the parents that I have, and I think that's been proven over and over and over again, over especially the last couple of years. Just the conversations that we've had, and we disagree on a lot of things.
Sure.
But they are like, I've never felt like I'm not loved and valued and welcomed. And I think, looking back at my childhood, I see where that came from. I was raised really religiously. I went to church every Sunday. I went to church camp every summer.
Yeah.
My parents are still actively very religious, very, very active in their church. And so I think that is one of the things that kind of stands out most to me about my childhood. Yeah.
I'm right there with you. I grew up as a pastor's kid, grew up in the evangelical Christian church, and so I get it. I understand.
Yeah.
And I feel the same way. My mom is the one that, for a long time I just didn't want to hurt her, like I didn't want to tell her, and it's out there now. She knows. Hi, Mom, I love you. And like I don't call myself a Christian anymore. That's not something that's a part of my life. And that's difficult to say sometimes, just because I have so many friends still in that community, and still, that, and I'm cool with that. Like, that's fine. But like, I'm going to believe what I want to believe, like I'm going to be a part of, in charge of, I guess maybe is the right word, of like my own life. And, but I've always felt the same way. And my mom, she continues to reiterate that, of being like, it's okay, I still love you, and, that was, it's never a question. I don't think, I don't know if that's still a part of your life or not, but, it was never a question for me of whether she was going to love me, but you just didn't want to hurt your family,
Right.
But yeah, so you grew up in a conservative Christian home,
I did.
and what were some of your interests? Like what were the things that you were involved in as a child? Were you like outdoorsy, athletics, music, nature, movies?
Yeah, all of the above.
Yeah.
I was a
Check.
I was a shy kid. I would say I was almost painfully shy at some points in my life. And I had my few best friends and I was good. I didn't need anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
I was definition bookworm. I always carried a bag with me just so I could carry at least 2 or 3 books with me.
That's awesome.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I was the #1 accelerated reader every year, you know. I was really academic. I think I knew from, as early as 1st or 2nd grade that I did not want to stay in my hometown.
Mm-hmm.
And in my mind, the way out was college. So
Nice.
I was pretty academically driven as a kid. And I was a swimmer. I swam competitively year round. And
Nice.
I think I needed that structure and having someone, tell me what to do and what stroke and what distance and all of that. So
Yeah.
I really thrived kind of in that team. And that's where I think started to blossom, was getting older with the swim team and just having those friends and that level of comfort of being part of that team.
Yeah. Swimming is a tough sport.
Yes. And I'm really short, so I'm already at a disadvantage when
sure.
I'm swimming, but yeah.
I was a wrestling coach as a wrestler growing up, and like next to wrestling, like swimming is one of those that's like they work so hard. Swimmers are like the practice, you guys' practice, and the things that you have to go through to get to where you want to be, and to be competitive is intense. Yeah. It's grueling sport.
And you swim, you have practice every day during the week, and then you have meets every weekend. So it's your whole life. And
yep.
My brother and sister and I all swam. So that
cool.
was my family. That was what we did. We were a swimming family.
Is that how you got introduced to swimming then, as your brother and sister?
I don't, kind of. They're both younger than me. So.
Oh, okay. So you led the way.
Yeah, I guess. We kind of all started swimming at the same time.
Nice.
So I don't even remember how we got into it. I was too young, but I just remember we were swimmers. That's what we did.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite book like growing up? Do you remember, was there like one that you loved?
Oh, yes. So The Phantom Tollbooth by Norton Juster. I have read that book so many times that the cover fell off. It was just the most magical, clever book I'd ever read. And I've even reread it as an adult, and there's so many things that I miss. There's so much wordplay, and it's just so clever.
I love that.
I loved the adventure of it. I loved, I don't want to give anything away, but I loved the transformation of the main character, and
cool.
It was definitely that was the book that I always had with me.
I have it written down. I have to check that out.
It's so good.
Pull it back
it's just such a cute book.
I love it. What about now? Do you have any like favorite books like now as an adult?
Yes. I recently read Americana, which was beautifully done. And there's an author, Miranda July. She's so weird, but I love everything that she's written. I'm currently reading a book by her called It Finds You, and she just read advertisements in a penny saver and went and met the people who were selling random things, asked them their stories, got to know them, and then took photos and just created this book of stories.
That's so cool.
Of total strangers. Yeah. So it's interesting. Her perspective is so odd and so different from mine, but she's very interesting.
Cool. And it's Amanda July?
Miranda July.
Miranda.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm like writing these down. I gotta check them out. I'm more of a non-fiction kind of person, but this gal sounds really interesting, and that book sounds really cool. So to check that out.
It's really cool.
What did you say you wanted to be when you grew up?
Ooh, I either wanted to be a librarian or a storm chaser. Those were
Nice.
my two dreams.
Oh, see, I love that question because everybody's different.
Yeah.
So I was talking to Saul Malone. We did a podcast together, and he said he wanted to be a dump truck driver. Whenever he was like a child, and I was like, yes, that's so good. It's such a good
Yeah.
one. I love those
Yeah.
like obscure ones where you're like, yeah, a librarian or a yeah, it's great. That's
Yeah.
great. What kind of a student were you as you kind of like got a little older and got into middle school, high school?
Oh, I was definitely the little nerdy teacher's pet.
Yeah.
I always did my homework. I stressed over not getting A's. I definitely was like I wanted to have options,
Mm-hmm.
and school was important to me. And especially, so I saw, not to bring it back to Invisible Children, but
No, go for it.
I saw the Rough Cut, the original film,
Sure.
when I was 15 at the church camp that I always went to.
Nice.
And I knew immediately that is what I wanted to do when I grew up.
Nice.
That I think, honestly, I can pinpoint that moment as like completely changing the trajectory of my life. And so I chose the college that I went to because they had the #1 nonprofit program in the country. And I wanted that degree in order to better my chances of working at Invisible Children.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And so I ended up going to that school, getting that degree, and then graduating a semester early in order to go on the Coney 2012 tour.
Yeah.
So,
wow, that's so cool.
yeah.
I just find it so like even thinking about like we know like Jason and some of those guys now, and
Yeah.
like thinking about like when they started Invisible Children, how like no concept of what it would turn into,
Right.
to the fact
What
that
it-
somebody would want to go to college to study something specific just so they could work for
Yeah.
what they had created. Like I think that's just such a cool like narrative.
Yeah. And I was absolutely starstruck when I met Jason for the first time.
Yeah.
And I think now there's such a clear line from that moment to where I'm at today. And I can pinpoint things that I learned at Invisible Children that kind of, gave me the confidence to just quit my job and move to Alaska.
Yeah.
And it's the relationships that I made at Invisible Children that kind of pushed me along.
Yeah. I would love to hear those if you're willing to share some of those like moments. Like go for it. We can jump around wherever we want. This is our show. We get to do whatever we want.
Yeah,
so.
Of course. I saw the film. I chose my college. I went to that college.
What college did you go to?
William Jewell College.
Okay.
I'm sure you've heard of it. I'm just kidding. It's a small liberal arts school in Kansas City. So it's only about 1,100 students, so
Cool.
Nobody's ever really heard of it.
Yeah.
But I made friendships and connections there with people who are also Invisible Children supporters, so that kind of kept that momentum going. And applied in fall of 2011 and had taken classes at the right time to be able to graduate as soon as I found out I got the job. So that worked out perfectly.
What did you graduate with? What was your degree?
Nonprofit administration, psychology, and applied critical thought and inquiry.
We'll unpack that later.
It's really just most of my classes were like, okay, we should just question everything, and I was like, okay.
Yeah.
That was about it. But yeah, so it all fell into place so perfectly. I don't know if I believe in fate, but sometimes I look back at my life and I'm like, maybe I do.
I know. I'm right there with you. I can't figure it out either, whether I believe in fate or not. Like,
yeah.
I always say that I believe in purpose because I feel like there's certain things that have happened that feel so purposeful, and call it fate, call it whatever you want. But
yeah,
I'm the same way. Like, there's certain relationships that I've met. Like, I wouldn't be here in Florida right now if it wasn't for like very specific things that had to have taken place. Like you pull one pin out and the trajectory of my life looks completely different.
Absolutely.
And I look at that and I'm like, like there's so much more. There's so much more to what's going on than we understand and know.
Yeah. And I'm in a relationship, and we talk about how we met and the timing of it all.
Yeah.
And we almost met a year earlier. And if we had met then, we would not be together. Neither of us were in a place where it, you know, and so things like that happen. And I look at it and I'm like, of course I believe in fate, but then sometimes I want to fight against that because I don't like the idea that I'm fated to do anything. But,
that you're like out of control, like that you're not making those decisions, which that's like an age-old debate and one that I've wrestled with for so long. But yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. I mean, my wife and I, we met on Tinder. So we were set to go on a date for the first time, and she went on a date like the night before or the previous couple nights before our date, and she hit it off with the guy, and she sent me a message and was like, hey, like I went on this date, I want to see where things go, but like thanks, you know. And I was like, all right, well, thanks for telling me, you know, and not just like taking advantage of me. So I like appreciated that. And then it was like 3 or 4 months later, she texted me again and was like, hey, like, how's it going? And I was like, hey, how's that guy? And the rest is history, you know. But it's like timing, like, and I've told her, like, I was dating other people, you know, like I don't know, like I was coming out of a relationship that I kind of had my heart broken and whatever, and like I don't know that I was in the right spot to even date you at that time. Like I don't know if we would have dated at that time, if we would have still be together, you know. And timing is so crazy.
Absolutely. If I had met my girlfriend at the beginning of 2018, I truly believe it would have been just a little blip. Yeah. And then we would have moved on. And so the way that it worked out, just, I mean, I think about it regularly, and I am. It's
beautiful, isn't it?
I almost want to cry because I'm so happy with how it worked out. Yeah. And I feel like it was meant to be. So.
That's so cool. Yeah. That's so cool. Yeah. And I know you're kind of telling this story, but is it hard being in Alaska and being separated from her?
So this will be our first kind of test. So I met her after I got back from Alaska.
Oh, okay. I got you.
So yeah. And so which I also think is perfect, because if I had met her before, I don't know if I would have gone. Yeah. And so I'm glad that I was able to have that adventure and be there and be present. And now I will be able, I'm excited to get off the boat every day and call her and tell her about it. And we've talked about it. Yeah, we've talked about it extensively, and she's so supportive and excited for me. And then, you know, we're excited for what's next after Alaska. Yeah. So, yeah.
That's important. And like having that person that you're excited to call and that you can communicate with and talk and like make decisions together. Like there's nothing better.
Yeah, absolutely. And we kind of started off distance. I'm living in Illinois, and working there until I go to Alaska. So I think we're starting off with the right communication and the right approach to be able to make it last. And so I'm definitely more excited about the next few months than I am nervous about, you know, are we going to make it? So
yeah, that's awesome. Good for you. Yeah. I'm happy for you. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, continue on. We've jumped around. No, we've jumped around. We're all over the place, but it's okay. I like it. And I'm learning so much about you because I don't really know that much about you, Allie. Yeah. So we were talking about invisible children, kind of fate, and some of those things, like heading that direction. Yeah. It worked out perfectly with school, being able to graduate, and then go and work at Invisible Children.
Yeah, and I think that working at Invisible Children during Kony 2012, to have supported that for so long and then get to be there at
the pinnacle.
That yes. I feel like that was fate. You know, if I had been there for Frontline, or if I hadn't started until Move Tour, I feel like I would have missed out on something. Yeah. And even though Kony 2012 was one of the most difficult things I've ever gone through. Yeah. I feel like I was very lucky. I had an incredible team. And I learned so much and built so much confidence in the mindset of, well, if I can do this, I can do anything. Yeah. And I feel like that kind of, is the mindset that I walked into future experiences with, and is what kind of gave me the ability to just do it, go for it.
Yeah. Jump first,
yeah.
fear later, right?
Exactly. Yes.
To throw it way back to really drive this point home.
Yeah.
If you're listening, that was like one of our like mottos at Invisible Children. It was like jump first, fear later. And I haven't really thought about that in a while, but it's so true. It's true, you know. The other one's what? Build the plane as it's flying. We did that.
Oh yeah.
We did that every day. So
yeah.
I think what you're speaking to personally is the empowerment. Like, we were so empowered to be the best. We were trusted.
Yeah.
And did we make mistakes along the way? Absolutely. You know, like,
yeah,
absolutely. But it was get back up, brush yourself off, and let's get back after it, you know? And yeah, I don't know. It was a magical place. It really was. I can't say enough good things about it. And, you know, it's funny because, like, we get it too, because we could be the critics, but nobody else can. And like, we'll say all the nice things always, right? There's plenty of things. Right. Every organization, every place has its, like, you know, the cons and whatnot, but those are always fun to talk about with people, and how like, if anybody else said anything, you'd be like, stop it, you know, like, don't talk about that. But yeah. So are there specific moments, or are there one or two, or like, I don't know, are there any moments that you kind of mentioned that there were like moments you could pinpoint, you know, that have kind of like led you to now? Are there specific ones, or like memories or thoughts that you have?
Yeah, I think moving to Virginia in the first place was one where I'd never been to the area outside of Move DC, which was kind of an overwhelming experience for me. And so I was just going off of what Sammy was telling me, and the fact that I didn't want to live in Southern Illinois, and that's where I was. And I didn't know a lot about the company I was going to work for. I didn't know the area, and I just kind of went for it. And I think that was just a moment of, you know, what do I have to lose?
Sure.
So, that's definitely one. And then through my job at the tech company, I was presented with a couple of opportunities to travel internationally.
Nice.
And I almost didn't take the first one, which was to go and live in India for a couple of months. And it was kind of that same mindset of, you know, what do I have to lose?
Yeah.
And so I went for it. And I think that was definitely a moment where I can pinpoint just that confidence and empowerment coming into play.
Yeah. That's so cool. Who are your teammates at Invisible Children?
Aaron Miller, Rosa Coleman, and Caleb Riddle, and Quinto, my first tour.
Nice.
And then my second tour was Briley and Rachel, and Joffrey Ochen. Okay. What an angel.
I know. I love Joffrey.
Yeah.
It's that second group. I'm not as familiar with that group of people. That one, I just don't feel like I knew those roadies as well. I think it's because we were separated, you know, we were over in the new office for so much, or like the warehouse. I spent most of my time over there.
Yeah.
But
I feel like that second tour, there was just such a distance between the office and the roadies, because there was so much happening in both groups. Yep. And the only time that I really interacted with a lot of the office interns was when we were at the roadie house, but I feel like I was never at the roadie house because I was always booking tour.
Yeah.
So I feel like I was a lot closer to people my first tour than my second tour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have Aaron on one of these days. So we're working it out and trying to find a date. So Aaron Miller. So get ready,
the
folks.
Legend.
Yeah. Still kicking it at IC. So it'll be fun to have somebody from Invisible Children kind of come and talk and tell us about what's going on there these days and fill us in on a little bit of her life. So I love that gal. She's great.
No, she's wonderful. I learned a lot from her.
Yeah. That's the other part. Like, I feel like I learned a lot about myself in the process. You know, we talked about it. It's like going through marriage counseling when you're like trying to like learn about your team, you know, you're like, it's the simple things. It's so crazy. It's the wider wheat bread, you know, like it's not even things you even think about. Like, oh, what do you prefer? You know? Oh, interesting. You know, like eating habits are a big one because you spend so much time in the van and you're like trying to meet everybody in the middle and everybody's got different tastes and things they want. And but yeah, I don't know. I feel like I learned so much about myself just by asking those questions and like growing and learning about how you handle difficulties, how you, you know, altercation, whatever that might be, you know, like inner team, you know, conflict in some ways where you just, at some point in time, it's like siblings or I was an only child, so I can't really say that, but it's like you get annoyed with each other at some point in time. You're bound to get annoyed with each other. And so it's just learning how to deal with those and what you need and what your threshold is for certain things, you know, and you learn all of those little quirky things, and it's a very introspective time as well.
And it was so interesting. I don't think he'll care that I tell this, but Caleb and I, we fought like brother and sister for most of the tour, and neither of us could pinpoint what it was. And then one day we just like sat down and talked about it, and it was all about like how we cared about each other. He was so helpful and kind and wanted to do things for us, but the way that I received that was he didn't think I was capable of doing these things. Like he would carry the heavy things, and I was like, I'm strong enough to carry the heavy things. And so it was just so interesting once that clicked. He's now one of my favorite people on the planet, you know. And it's just, those relationships are so, it's just so interesting. What, you know, living out of a van for 10 weeks will do to a person.
But it takes you into, you know, your relationship with your girlfriend now and my relationship with my wife. Like, those are the things that you're like, hey, this is something like, I'm doing this because I love you. Like, I'm doing this to show you I love you. And she's like, oh, you know, or like, whatever it is, it's the love languages, you know, like physical touch or words of affirmation or acts of service or whatever those things are. Like, those are real things. Like, people, you know, we've learned throughout the years. And, you know, quality time is mine. So there's days, and we just have this understanding now, you know, and knowing, hey, like, we've been around each other, but we haven't really spent any time together. Like, I need that, you know. And she's like, cool, like, let's do it, you know. And but knowing and understanding what you need and what other people and how we all function together and like this puzzle. And when you can kind of figure that out, in whatever relationship, whether it's a friendship or whether it's your teammates or whatever it is, it's like really important life lessons of like learning about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
What so you said that you were 15 when you first saw Invisible Children, The Rough Cut. And, you know, we've kind of talked about this, like you took this trajectory. What was it about the film, you know, where have you always been like an empathetic person? Like, did you always like care about the world like you do? Or was that like an aha moment that kind of changed that for you or opened your eyes?
Yeah, I hope I've always been empathetic and cared about the world, but when I was younger, I definitely would sometimes say like I want to be a missionary or I want to go and help people. That was something that I feel like I was always at least aware of when I was a kid. And then I think Invisible Children was the first like tangible, oh my God, this has sucked me in and I like, I'm done, you know? And I just remember seeing it. I was sitting in the back of the chapel at church camp, and I was sobbing. And I almost felt a little helpless because I didn't know. I was like, I'm only 15. Like, what do I do? And then they gave us so many actionable things that we could do. And I hosted my first screening when I was 16.
Nice.
And I felt wanted and needed, and like I can actually impact something. And so I think it was those actionable items that really, really kind of sucked me in and kept me there. So because I'd heard so many, we always had missionaries coming to our churches and things
Yep.
like that. And
Same.
the only thing that they asked, they were, okay, we need money or we need prayers. And I was
Yeah.
like, well, I'm, 13. I don't have any money. And
Yeah.
I can pray, but I don't feel like I'm doing anything.
Yeah.
And so
you can't see the fruits of your labor in whatever way.
Yeah.
It's like,
and so it was really the first time that I was like, oh, you want me to help. Okay.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that was what got me. So it was something I was always passionate about, but that was the first time that I felt like I could do something about it.
Yeah. Mine was Patch Adams, the movie.
Oh, that's such a good movie.
Yeah, like just him. That was like one of my like turning points, I think.
Yeah.
Was when I saw that movie, and I was probably, the same age like you were saying.
Yeah.
I don't know, 13, 14, 15, somewhere in there. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I don't know, just caring for people and helping people, and I was the same way. Like I always, my parents, I have this story that my parents always say, like we had missionaries, at our house or whatever, and I said I'm going to go to Africa someday. And
mm-hmm.
I remember like third grade, I think it was, I did a report on Kenya, and like I don't know, it was just like interesting, and I never really thought about it until like later after Invisible Children, where I was like, oh, I've still never been to Africa, but I like took part in something that was really cool. I feel like I was very much, we all played such a huge part, and I think that's what's so hard about coming back into reality. Mm-hmm. In some ways, like after IC, was you knew exactly the impact that your work was doing, and like if you didn't do it, nobody else was going to do it, and like it was important, and you felt important, you felt needed, you felt useful, you felt like you had purpose. And coming out of that where you're like, what now, what, like was hard. When you were looking at college, were there, obviously Invisible Children was an inspiration. That's generally one of my questions. Like, what was your inspiration to go for this? Like, were there people that influenced you? But were there other influences? Did your parents have a say? Did they want you to go in a different direction or a direction at all?
Yeah, my parents were so supportive. They were going to support me no matter where I went to school. My mom's best friend was a William Jewell alumni.
Okay.
So she was the one who kind of introduced me to that school. And then throughout my visits, my admission counselor, her name was Bridget, she really kind of won me over. I felt very wanted. I felt like they were taking a personal interest in me.
Yeah.
Which on this side of things, that's their job, so it makes sense. But between the two of them, it felt right. I remember walking onto campus for the first time and just feeling like, oh,
yeah,
this is it. Yeah, I just knew.
I know.
And it had the programs that I wanted. It was a liberal arts school, so there was a lot of other aspects that pulled me into it.
Sure.
There were a couple of other colleges that I looked at, and I know if I had gone to those schools, it wouldn't have been the same. And I don't think I would have thrived like I did at Jewell.
That's cool. Yeah, I went to, it was a small conservative Christian liberal arts school as well, Bethel College, out of now Bethel University in Indiana. So similarly, like I walked onto campus, it was kind of the same thing. I'm like, this is where I'm going to go. I ended up, like it was like a recruitment visit for wrestling, and I was like the day that we were supposed to leave, and I told my mom, I was like, we can go, but like I'm not gonna go there, like I already know, like, so we canceled it, we just didn't go. And it's crazy to think about, like just there was just something about it, just like you said, like it's just something about it. I knew I wanted to go there. Applied critical thought and inquiry. I'm bringing it back. It really intrigues me. I think it's awesome.
It's
go on. Yeah.
I don't know. It's a good degree. It's nothing too special, but
yeah. Like you said, you were taught to question everything? Is that kind of did you go through like I remember taking a class. My professor was rough. No longer works there. He didn't work there after the year that I had him. I had the lucky break of having him, but like the A plus B equals C, kind of like the models of like
Mm-hmm.
critical thinking, or like of like an argument almost, or like a speech patterns. I remember those, like mixing those up and him trying to like explain these critical thinking concepts to us.
Yeah, I think the thing that I really liked about the degree is that it was so well rounded, and you had to take classes in different areas. So there's focuses in science, focus in ethics, focus in religion, and it just kind of brought it all full circle into this question everything mindset.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it was just interesting to be able to step out of my other degrees and kind of dive into these areas that I wouldn't have gotten exposure to otherwise.
Sure.
So,
did it affect your mindset, or how you see things, or how you saw things before you took that course or this major?
Yeah, I think just, I mean, I got a lot of different perspectives, even on religion, and so I'm similar to you in that I grew up really religious, and I no longer am, and I think that was kind of the beginning of the end of it for me, like being able to be in a safe environment and ask questions and make that decision on my own to decide what religion I was, or if I was going to be religious. So I would say it had that level of impact on me. Sure. And being able to have those conversations and get different perspectives. And so, yes.
Yeah, no. I imagine that it would have an impact, on the way you think. And do you ever like see yourself now? Like I feel like those college years, I was a Bible major myself, even in through college, but I was really started to find my own way and realize that, like I didn't know what I believed. It was like I realized that it was what I had been taught for so long. And so that was the beginning for me of starting to question a lot of things and question not just my faith, but that was the biggest impact. It was just starting to look at my life differently through a different lens of going, like I've always done this, or I've always said this, but is that really what I believe? And it's been, man, probably since college, I still feel myself, kind of trudging through some of those questions, some of those thoughts of like, who am I? What am I? What do I believe? What is it that I stand for? And why?
Right. And I think so much of my religious experience growing up, my dad's a Christian family counselor.
Yeah.
And my mom is very religious. And I think so much of my religion, and you can't see me, but I'm doing air quotes, was that spiritual high after camp, or the chills that come with the right song during a service. But I don't know if I truly connected, or if I just lived off of the high. And I also knew that I was not straight from a very young age, and I felt very burned by a lot of the teachings of church, especially when I was a kid, and it was, I feel like, significantly more taboo.
And it wasn't something you could probably felt safe to even talk about, or to just isn't that environment.
Yeah. And so I think that I struggled with that internally for most of my life.
Yeah.
And feeling this disconnect of, well, I'm supposed to love everyone, but you wouldn't love me if you knew this about me. I really struggled with that even as a kid. And I think that was kind of, once I finally accepted that and realized that what was being preached wasn't what was being lived, it was a lot easier to separate and kind of walk away.
Yeah. Sure. Do you mind talking about, that experience of knowing you were gay? And
yeah. No, I don't mind at all. I can distinctly remember when I was a kid, this girl that I went to church with said being gay is a sin. And I was like, what is gay? And she told me, and it was like a light switch flipped, and I was like, oh no, I think I am.
Yeah, shit.
And I do, I mean, I don't like the term bisexual, but that's the term that I feel like most fits me.
Sure.
And so I was able to fly under the radar because I do also date men. And so for most of my life, I kind of was in this mindset of, well, you know what? I'm just going to ignore that half of me and just focus on this half and not ever have to tell anyone.
Yeah.
And then I went through kind of a rough breakup a few years ago, and then dated a woman for the first time and got my little heart broken again. So kind of back to back heartbreak. And I just realized I couldn't talk to my mom about that breakup. I couldn't tell her the exciting things. I couldn't cry to her. And so that was the context that I came out to her in was, Mom, you're my mom.
Yeah.
I was able to talk about this one, but I couldn't talk to you about this one, and that's not fair.
Yeah.
And it's been a lot of conversations over the last couple of years, but at this point I can confidently say I could bring a partner home who is not male, and they would be welcomed. They would be my partner. They would be someone that my family valued for me. You know, as long as I'm happy, they'll be happy.
There's
awesome. Still a lot of conversations to be had, but
but it started, right?
Yeah,
like the conversation's
absolutely.
happening, and man, I'm like tearing up like thinking about that, because like just the idea of like not being able to tell, you know, like it's so hard. And it's not fair. It's like, it shouldn't be that way, you know?
Right.
And I don't know. I'm happy for you that you
Thank you.
are being brave, and you know, you brought that to your parents, and you know, it's like it's sad, but I think it's true with so many things. And this is what I love about this platform, right? CrazyFaceUno, and telling stories, is that it doesn't matter if you're straight, gay, you believe in Buddha or Jesus Christ. Like, I don't care, right? There's so many other things about us that unite us, that are commonalities, that it's the things that are different that are cool. Like, they should be unique and be like celebrated, not like this barrier, you know? And it doesn't matter. I just don't like that. And I love that we can have a conversation and show that, like, man, there's so much more. Like, look what we have in common. Your proximity to people that you agree with or disagree with or whatever oftentimes like affects how you see other people. And if we can tell those stories of people and be like, look, like, we have way more in common than we have different, just because you had this one viewpoint, you know? And I don't like the division that I see in our world today, and I hope that through storytelling we can kind of bridge that gap a little bit. And,
absolutely. And I think the last few weeks, especially, my relationship now is significant enough that I'm ready to fully come out and be that person. And
good for you.
Something that I've been so impressed with is I come out to a lot of my high school friends. And being from a conservative small town in the Midwest, I didn't know how that would go.
Yeah.
And I feel they've been so graceful and welcoming and just so happy for me.
Yeah.
And I had one who said, I was just talking about how you don't come out once, you come out over and over and over again. And she was like, I can't wait for you to feel like you don't have to come out to tell someone about someone that you love. And that just really stuck with me of like, well, why should I feel like I have to come out? Like, why can't I just talk about it? And so that's kind of the approach that I'm trying to take, is be like, don't feel like I have to preface it with, by the way, I'm not straight. I say, my girlfriend, and just talk about it like nothing is. Yeah.
And that's what you did with me, even saying like, hey, I'm in DC, I'm visiting my girlfriend. I'm like, cool. You know, like, no skin off my back. Like, I don't care. You know, like I didn't know you were, but it's not you're more than that, you know, like you're more than being gay. You're more than bisexual. You're more than your sexual orientation and who you like and who you don't like and whatever. Like, you're a human being, for goodness sake, you know, like you're more than that. And I hope you find that peace and that comfort as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Man, sorry, I'm just thinking about all of that. And thank you. I really appreciate,
I mean,
obviously I never thought about the idea of like, you don't just come out once, you come out over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And, you know, for you to be willing to share that on this platform, I really do appreciate that. And I don't take that for granted. And thank you. Yeah. Thank you for being vulnerable.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Of course. And I think part of me is I recognize how fortunate I am in like my privilege of having a family that's accepting and having friends that are accepting and being someone who's not ever going to be, I'm trying to think of the right word, put down or I'm never going to face any consequences from it that are going to genuinely affect my life. And so if I can comfortably talk about it and make other people a little bit more comfortable with it, then I feel like I should.
Yeah.
Because I come from a place of privilege in that. And so being able to talk about it on a platform like this is I almost feel like it's something I should do, because maybe that will make one more person more comfortable for the next person who has to talk about it.
Yeah. And I'm like, I want to celebrate, you know, these different aspects of people, you know, whether it's faith or your sexual orientation. Sometimes like this conversation, you know, with, you know, being gay, straight, you know, whatever the LGBTQ plus community, it's honestly, it's a lot of ignorance on my part, you know, and just not understanding, and not that I'm not accepting. It's just, I don't even know how to talk about it. I don't know how to bring it up. Like, I want to be super respectful and sensitive and, you know, like I don't want to make anybody uncomfortable, and I don't really care, you know, like I really think that there's more to people than just this one little piece of them, you know. But at the same time, I think it's very important to talk about, and an important conversation to have, especially in our world today, where we're starting to make some progress, you know, and looking at human beings as human beings, and not what they, I don't know, just anything, name the thing, right? And so it's hard sometimes. I just like, I'm not sure how to bring that or like have that conversation, but I appreciate it.
Of course.
For sure. Would you, you know, like looking back, would you do things differently? Would you come out sooner? Would you talk about that more at an earlier age, or is it kind of like fate? Like, this is the way it was supposed to happen?
Yeah, I don't think that I would change anything about the timeline, because I think one of the biggest things was my parents were not ready to have that conversation.
Sure.
I'll be honest. When I told my mom, the actual thing that she said was that I was confirming her worst fears. I think they kind of always knew, but I had never come out to them, and they didn't want to ask me for fear of like offending or upsetting me.
Yeah.
And excuse me. And so I'm glad that I waited until I did, because I was able to come with context and emotion, and I was, you know, her hurt daughter, and her mom instincts kicked in, and we were able to have a good conversation.
Yeah.
And I also don't think that I was like, I knew, but I suppressed it for so long and tried to fight against it. And so I'm glad that I was able to wait until I was fully confident in, yes, this is who I am. This is what I want.
Yeah.
And, there wasn't any going back on that, because I think that would have been harder for my parents to understand than coming to them with confidence. So I don't think I would have changed anything. I'm happy with how the conversations went, and I'm happy with the progress that we've made.
Yeah. So that's awesome. That's like generally even just not even in the conversation of like coming out as being gay or straight or whatever, but just in life in general, most people say the same thing, right? Like, you know, it's this experience that I've had that's made me who I am today. And are the things I wish would have gone differently? Sure. But like, there are life lessons, and I've learned, and like now they're part of my life. So I think that's a common, you know, like a common place to see. I feel similarly, you know, like would I choose now to go to the college I went to? Probably not, you know, but like my best friends are from there. Like, I would have never met my best friends. I would have never met my wife. These are one of those things, right? Like, I moved to Minnesota, to the Twin Cities, because of my best friend from college who lived there. And I met my wife there. Like, those are like those little things, you know? Like, I don't know. So, yeah, would I change things? Yeah, maybe, but I love my life. I'm very happy with where I'm at. So, what would you say you're most proud of to date?
Oh,
we're moving into the tough questions.
We're going into the tough questions. I think the thing, and maybe it's because I am starting a new relationship and like really focusing on that area of my life. I think the thing I'm most proud of, my dating history is not pretty. There's been a lot of heartbreak there for me, but I didn't let it get me. I didn't let it like destroy any part of me. And I almost feel like it was preparing. We talk about it all the time. I feel like the things that I learned from each of my relationships and my dating experiences prepared me to be the person that my girlfriend needs me to be.
So cool.
And I think I'm most proud of not letting that take me out. And I'm so happy with where I am now that like I would do it all again. And I think that's probably, you know, that's one of the most important things that you can do in your life is like not for everybody, but for me, is to find that person that makes sense and just, you want to just relax into. And I'm proud of myself for committing to that and not giving up on it.
Good for you.
Thank you.
That's awesome. You should be proud of that.
Thank you.
What are you looking forward to most in the future? You have any goals and ambitions? I know you've got some fun things relationship wise in Alaska and some different things, but what else?
So I think I maybe discovered my passion the last few months. While I've been home in Illinois, my mom is a school psychologist, and one of her classrooms for primarily kids with autism needed just an extra body to be there. And so I am that body. I showed up and had no idea what I was doing. And working with these kids has been one of the most wonderful experiences. It's so hard. You know, we have kids who are nonverbal. They don't speak. It's hard to communicate with them. I can't figure out what they need. But just seeing any kind of progress, I'm like living for it. It is so
Isn't it
wonderful.
cool?
And it's so cool. And I've always wanted to kind of go into education somehow, but I didn't know what that looked like. And I feel like this could be at least the next thing for me. And so I am really excited to go to Alaska, have one more stint there, and then come back and really dive into just the education sector and primarily special education and see if that might be what I'm supposed to be doing. That I think that's something that I get excited thinking about. You know, I wake up and drive to the school and I'm excited to get there and see my kids and, you know, figure out how we can communicate.
I've worked until we moved down to Florida here, I worked in special education for about the last, 4 or 5 years. And growing up, my mom worked in special education. So it's always been something that I've been around my entire life. And it's so true. Like those communication barriers that as you work and you work and you work and you work on like teaching appropriate communication and like how to understand individuals. And then when you see, again, it's the same, like we're human beings. It doesn't matter if you have a disability or, you have autism or whatever it is, like it's not important, but it's treating people with dignity and just like a human being. And when you can bridge that gap and you see that you need each other, like you're learning alongside your students and, like they're leaning on you, you feel that purpose for sure. It's hard. It's tough. And some days you come home and you're like, what did we just do? Like, what happened? Did we do anything? Like, did that mean anything? But
yeah. And there's some days where every single kid is just not feeling it.
Yeah.
And it's just,
and then you
my
check
entire day
the moon phases and you go, oh yeah, it's a full moon today.
It's a full moon. Yeah.
That's a real thing. That's a real thing.
It really is. But it's just, those are the hard days where I get in my car at the end of the day and I'm like, oh my gosh, I am exhausted.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like we got anything done. But then it's like, okay, well, I'll try tomorrow. So.
Yep. And then 2 weeks later, you see this like breakthrough, and it means so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's so cool.
Yeah. So that's something that I'm definitely really, really excited about. Kind of really digging into and figuring out if that might be where I go vocationally. So
cool. Good for you.
Thank you.
Do you ever think about your legacy?
Yes. I guess. I don't know if I would use the word legacy, but
yeah, it's like the things that people would remember you by,
Yeah. Yes, I do. I try. I think about, how to make the biggest impact, and what I want that to look like. And something that I think about a lot is I want to foster kids someday.
So cool.
And I feel like that's kind of always what I thought would be my legacy, is just being like a good foster mom to some kids. And, even if I didn't have one kid that's like, okay, I felt safe here.
Yeah.
That's more than enough. So that's something that I think about, and just being a good friend, being a good partner, being a good person.
Yeah. It's a tough question. I don't know if I have an answer to it personally.
Yeah.
So, but like, it's one of those that, we've lost some people, some IC folk and Alex, and, when people, take their own life, or we lose someone too soon, it's hard. And we hear about legacy, we hear about, the things we remember them by, and it's something we think about, immediately. Like, your memory goes back to like these different things and the way you think of people. And it really has just got me thinking, I guess, in so many ways. And so I'm really always curious. I think we all kind of subconsciously have this like idea, or this thing that we're like striving for, or like we want to be remembered. We have these things that are important to us, and a theme in your life is like helping others and taking care of people, and like you can hear it in your voice, and you get excited about talking about that, and it's cool, and like those are the things that we'll be remembered for. And I don't know, it's an interesting question. I honestly am not sure I have an answer for it myself, but I think about it, that's for sure.
And I mean, I think about it even just like being a good mom someday. Like, if that's my legacy, that's my legacy. That's more than enough.
Yeah.
So, I
love that.
Yeah.
Looking back, this is my last question, okay, and then we'll close things out. But looking back, what advice would you tell little Allie?
Oh, I would tell her it's gonna get easier. Not even little Allie, just Allie of like 2016, 2017. Like,
sure.
Like, it's gonna get easier. It'll all be worth it. And don't give up on yourself. Because I definitely did a few times and had some dark phases. And I think I would also tell her to just go for it. Like, don't be afraid of what everyone thinks. Like, if you want to do this, do it, because missing out on things will be the biggest regret of your life.
Well said.
Thank you.
Well said.
Yeah.
Any additional thoughts? Any advice you want to give other people, or anything you want to say? You can plug your place out in Alaska.
Yeah, I was about to say, if you want to
go
see a whale, go see a whale. Like, don't just say I'll do it later, because
what's it called again? What's your place?
Yeah, I work for Kenai Fjords Tours. So let me know if you want to see some whales. I'll hook you up.
Can you say that one more time?
Yeah, it's Kenai Fjords Tours.
Can you spell that?
Yeah, yes I can. It's Kenai And then Fjords is FJORDS. Tours.
SJORJS. Is that what you said?
S is in Frank, JORDS.
DS. Got it. Wow.
Yeah.
Man, I was struggling.
It's a great place.
Yeah, I want to. I want to check it out. I would love to do that.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen a whale like outside of like in the wild. You know. Like,
yeah.
We always went to in San Diego. We'd go up to the lighthouse, point or whatever that was called, Cabrillo National Park, and like try to spot whales, but I never saw any.
Yeah. Well, yeah. My advice is if you want to go see a whale, go see a whale because it might change your entire life.
Let's do it. I'm in. I'm in. You've sold me. You've sold me. Allie,
let me know when you're headed that way. I'll get you on my boat.
Perfect. Allie, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story and talking to us. We were a little all over the place, but it was fun.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Shane.
Awesome. I'm going to close things out now.
All right. Awesome.
Thank you all so much for listening. Please visit Facebook and Instagram. You can like and comment on our posts. If you want to go above and beyond, please share the CrazyFaceUno podcast with your friends and family or random strangers on the street. We're welcome to everyone. Once again, please visit CrazyFaceUno.com to purchase our merchandise and donate. Your contributions help us tell more stories like Allie's and stories just like yours. Thanks again for listening, everyone. Appreciate you. Love you all.